He's smart. And he got an engineering degree and then got an MBA. He worked for 5 years for Silicon Valley Bank and is now working for Capital One Bank in Seattle. He has developed an interest in sitting on airplanes and came all the way out here and decided he wanted to be helpful and see if he could offer some expertise to us. So we've taken advantage of him to pull together a set of speakers to talk about fintech, but also with the help of the IPC, the Interbank Processing Center. And the IPC has asked us, KG Labs, if we would be willing to organize a set of events on fintech in Kyrgyzstan. So this is kind of a kickoff for a set of talks, set of events that we will have probably over the next year to talk about different elements of fintech and what should we be doing about them. So that's a major part of the background of how this came about. I also want to recognize and thank Danyar Amanadiv, not only because he's once again given us the space to work with, but Danyar used to be on the board of a bank, and he is personally very interested in this subject as well. So I know we'll continue working with Danyar. I also want to thank our program manager, Begaim, who's sitting behind the phone, live broadcasting this event now, who really did all the hard work to make this event, send out the invitations, and organized everything. So, with that, any immediate questions about why you're here? I want to say a little bit more about what we're going to talk about. Okay, the purpose of the discussion today is to start thinking about how can we stimulate the use of fintech in the Kyrgyz Republic. I would add to this a couple of words here. We want to stimulate not just the use of fintech, but access to fintech and availability of fintech. So it's one thing to say it's around, but if you're in the villages and the regions and don't have access to it, it's meaningless. So what can we do beyond just facilitating use, but actually making it available? So we've got 4 panelists with different perspectives. I'm going to give you a quick introduction of the other 3, and each of them is going to have 10 minutes to talk about their organization, their experience in fintech, and then we're going to start a discussion. As moderator, I have the privilege of asking the first question. After that, it's up to you. So you will ask questions. The panelists might ask you questions. The panelists can ask themselves, each other questions. And I will try to frantically take notes when I hear things that will relate to what are the questions, and what we should be thinking about for future topics. So in particular, when you are inspired by something and you say, this should be a topic for a future event, please make sure I write it down. Questions again? All right, so Farida is with Microfinanza Rating Association organization.
No, it's a rating agency.
Agency. And she will explain what that is. And do I need to say anything more about you? She's a great personality.
Very modest.
Yevgeny is the COO for OpenCVS. Again, Yevgeny will tell us more about that. Lots and lots of experience in this field. And Jonathan is with a very interesting area around here. He's particularly interested in cyber currencies, cryptocurrencies, as well as blockchain. And he is the founder of the Blockchain Association here in Kyrgyzstan. So he will, I know, have some interesting, for the techies, I think he's going to have some real interesting stuff to talk about. Okay, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan. And let me know if anything, oh yes. Panelists, I know we've asked everybody to work in English. If you, however, don't understand a word or some jargon, please ask, okay? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Seth. Hi, everybody. So just as Seth mentioned, I've been traveling. I arrived in Kyrgyzstan about noon today. So I am just learning about this wonderful country here. I don't personally have a lot to share about fintech in Kyrgyzstan, but I do have a bit to share about fintech. So I thought I would break my section here into two parts. One, I'll talk about working for a bank, in technology for a bank in the US and some of the trends that I'm seeing there. And then I thought I would take the second half and talk about my experiences in time in Kenya. Seth and I had lunch today, and I see a lot of similarities from my experience in Kenya to what Seth is seeing here in Kyrgyzstan. So I hope that story will be helpful for folks in the room. So just a quick little bit about Capital One. It is about the 20th largest bank in the United States. We have about 50,000 employees. We started out as a credit card company. The idea was to use data to provide credit cards to people who maybe on paper don't look like the best folks to receive a credit card. We then moved into traditional brick and mortar banks. We've expanded that into online banking. And the group that I work with in Seattle is investing, and specifically we're building an app for personal finance to help our customers make financial decisions that are in their best long-term financial interest. Some of the trends that I'm seeing from the States that I think I would like to talk about here, and I'm happy to answer more questions. Over the past 3 years, our bank has been undergoing a big transition to the cloud. Being a very data-heavy organization, when we started issuing credit cards, we've always maintained a lot of on-premise data. We realized over time that it's getting harder and harder to deliver the financial services through traditional IT models. And so we've been leveraging the cloud and trying to move to a better model to deliver services through technology. That is something that I believe that is impacting the industry significantly, both I think in the US and Europe and farther afield. Some further impacts that I think that this change is having, as the large incumbent banks have been slow to adopt some of these practices. The local press is calling it the unbundling of banking. You have very aggressive startups who are taking aspects of financial services and creating a business around a small component. An example of that is getting a lot of press in the States is robo-investing. They're using data to create predictive algorithms around what do the best financial investments look like for every single investor who's interested in signing up for an investing account. So it's optimized for your financial situation. That product by itself is able to beat, say, a financial advisor in the States. You have similar startups around insurance that are very aggressive, around payment processing, credit card processing, and so they're posing challenges to the larger banks that offer kind of a full service, and I think that's going to create a lot of change in the industry in the coming years. Another area that I work on is our data infrastructure. Data is becoming a much more important thing with the ability to process data. Machine learning is becoming a thing in banking, both for fraud detection as well as for things like delivering personalized experiences. The last trend I think that is starting to get a lot of talk and interest in the US is the use of chatbots. Talking to people about finance it's complex. I think people have different understandings of finance. What is the best way to help a user understand complex topics in finance? And so there's a lot of experimentation going on right now, particularly some of the aggressive startups that I mentioned. Any of those trends, but I just thought I would mention those as kind of the most important things that I see going on in the US. Just switching gears here, thought I would talk a little bit about my experiences in Kenya. Worked on a project there. Has anyone heard of M-Pesa here? Okay. Really quickly, kind of just summarizing, it is a cell phone-based peer-to-peer form of payment. I managed to have a meeting with Safaricom and got kind of a history of M-Pesa and what were some of the key decisions that were made to creating this platform. Some of the key lessons that I got out of that, very, very early on, I think Safaricom wanted to get into the fintech space. They didn't know how, and they initially thought the problem that they were trying to solve was payments, but as they understood their customers better, the most pressing, urgent problem was remittances. In Kenya, a lot of the young folks had come from the rural areas into Nairobi, the main city, would earn money and then have to send it back to relatives back out in the country. Obviously not safe to take large amounts of cash back with you. So solving that problem was a very urgent problem to solve. As they settled on the problem, they engaged with the Central Bank of Kenya. Because such a product didn't exist, there wasn't a way to regulate it. And so they explained to the central bank what they wanted to do, and they really worked in a collaborative way to figure out what were the challenges and the risks that the bank was most worried about, and design the regulation alongside the product. That really helped to get the central bank behind it and to get the support that it needed. Safaricom had about an 80% market share at the time that they rolled out M-Pesa. They were by far the largest carrier. I think personally, while some of the development and innovation could have happened through a startup for the technical sides of M-Pesa, it really needed a large organization to deliver on the brand, the marketing of it, the logistics of collecting the cash and loading it into their system. That had to be delivered by a large organization. They also talked about how pricing transparency was very important in order to get trust from the users behind it. I think the most important thing, and really the thing that could change Kyrgyz society from having a payment platform like M-Pesa, is it created what they call the clicks and bricks economy in Kenya. Having a non-cash medium for transferring money quickly that was trusted has created a whole ecosystem of businesses now that can get and receive payments from end consumers. And so you're seeing the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Kenya take off now because there's this underlying payment platform. And so that was part of the reason why I reached out to Seth, wanting to understand specifically how the entrepreneurial ecosystem is developing, but even more specifically, is there a payment platform to support that delivery? So thank you again for having me here. It's wonderful to meet all of you, and look forward to learning more about the ecosystem here in Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Ryan. Marita?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Seth and Ryan. Very interesting to see what is going on in these countries. So I represent Microfinance Rating. It's a private rating agency, and we were founded in 2000 in Italy by private individuals. Initially, we worked only with microfinance institutions, but with time, with microfinance institutions started growing, and they were turning into banks, and in a few countries, in our region as well, as you know, there are microfinance institutions in some places similar to banks or even larger than banks. So now we also work with banks and microfinance companies. We have offices around the world, and we are present in Nairobi, in Kenya. So as a network, we have very good understanding of fintech. Because we work with a lot of different African institutions where fintech is more developed. I myself, I cover Central Asia, Caucasus, Russia, and Mongolia. It's a big geographic geographical area that I cover, but in our portfolio, developed fintech is yet to appear. As you know, in our region, fintech is it's still a relatively new trend, and it is still moving, still in this nascent inception stage. What I would like to talk about today is probably tell a little bit of what we do in fintech, but then maybe talk about challenges with fintech that are happening here, maybe in our region, from my personal perspective. This is not company's perspective, just my feedback. One of the things we do as a rating agency, and that was a question of my friend, is like, you're a rating agency, what do you do with fintech? One of the services we provide is consumer protection of consumers of financial services. So there is a smart campaign, maybe some of you have heard. It's basically a movement of financial players and regulators and investors who they said we need to have a code of conduct for microfinance companies, and they came up with a client protection certification. But as the services started evolving, and there is a lot of these digital products now, they needed to adjust these client protection principles to new sort of delivery channel. Because it's completely different without a human, let's say, it's a technology to a person. And that is what our company is doing. We are working together with a smart campaign. There is a campaign called Fintech Protects. And for those staff who are working in the banks and for those people who are involved in providing services, I would welcome you to go on the website of the smartcampaign.org. I don't know if it is published yet, but they're piloting the client protection principles for fintech products. Please look at them, and basically the idea for this for us is to make sure it's done in a responsible way. So make sure it's not taking advantage of the final client. So that's just a bit of a background. But I think a big elephant in the room that we should acknowledge now is to discuss what fintech really means. Because fintech can mean different things, and as you have mentioned in the email what fintech will discuss here, but we could also say there are, let's say, very major three categories of fintech. One that Ryan has slightly mentioned is bringing technology to your operations. When you are putting your data into cloud, or you're basically using technology to make your operations faster, and it's for your internal use. For example, in Kyrgyzstan, there are institutions that take tablets onto the field. It's also sort of a fintech because you're using technology to deliver your financial product. There is more human touch to it, but it's still with the use of technology. Another that Ryan mentioned is artificial intelligence. So when you're providing a loan through an online platform as an online lender, or you're providing a loan through a mobile phone, you are feeding in parameters and you want to say, is this person trustworthy, will he or she repay the loan? That's another sort of a fintech. Some institutions will do a preliminary scoring analysis with follow-up visits. Some will base their analysis based only on artificial intelligence. And now the trend is that there are the self-learning algorithms. When you participate at international events, you will see institutions using all data they have about you, your social media, your phone, your check-ins, your behavior. Basically, it's not just your demographic characteristics, but basically all data that you have, you are providing all of this data to a financial provider. And the research that different institutions have been doing shows that people are willing to provide all the data about themselves. If they want to have a loan, they are ready to open up everything they have. And the third sort of an area, kind of like a category of fintech, I would say it's no human interaction, it's fully tech. And that's when you're interacting with technology. So in ProCredit Bank in Georgia, for example, maybe you have heard there, in the branches there are no people anymore. There are only terminals and payment boxes and cash-in machines. So basically no human, it's fully tech. And so when we are talking here, there are more banks, so you are more on a traditional side. We call your touch. You're touch basing with a human. And the new trend that Ryan is talking about is more like a tech, and that is more sort of an online lenders, and tech side in our region is yet to develop. So that's just kind of like a background information. And one interesting thing to talk about challenges with promoting fintech and with digital finance is a hot topic. Everybody says we want to have digital products. Everybody says, okay, we want to have mobile banking, or we want to have, mobile wallet. Banks are launching the services. MNOs, mobile network operators, are interested in the services as well. By the way, we work with them in other countries with mobile network operators for providing loans. But in our region, it's more like it's more the drive is just to be with the trend. It's not rather why are you doing this, who do you want to provide access to? Because the idea of doing, as Ryan mentioned, is first to find out what is the problem you are trying to solve. In Kenya, there was a clear problem. In our country, the problem for MFIs and for banks probably equally is that I want to be trendy. Yeah? I don't want to be late to jump on this train because everybody is going tech. What if I'm late to be in tech? Unfortunately, when you go tech, there are a lot of risks. There is a high IT risk. This IT risk is actually the second highest rated risk recently based on the recent research. CEOs recognize this risk as the second important risk for institutions. Then there is also an issue of mentality, because if you work with microfinance institutions, for example, you know that your potential clients for the digital tech products are usually those who deal with smaller amount of money, have limited access to banking, so they want to have more of a human interaction. They will come to the branch just to talk. So when you do it through the phone, you cannot talk to a person per se. So that's probably another issue, the mentality that may be an issue for stimulation of fintech. And yeah, finally, the third is probably an issue that we should discuss later on is regulation, maybe in other series, because an interesting, so Microsafe, they did a research in Africa on the use of fintech, and it showed that 70% of people who took a mobile loan, a loan from a phone, 70% of these people, they took it just to try, not because they needed money. They took it just to try. And that was because there were a lot of text messages coming in saying, you qualify for X amount of money, click the button, you'll have the loan. And the second most scary statistic is 30% of all people who took the first loan default. So 70% take a loan just to try, but then out of everyone, 30% default on the first loan. And among the reasons for defaults, it was listed that a person, when they get a text message saying you need to repay your loan, they would delete the message. And they would pretend nothing happens. If I deleted the message, they don't find out I'm not repaying the loan. So I think the regulation is an issue. While in our region this is just developing, I think the National Bank is already watching, of course, closely, but if the discussions further evolve, we can also talk more about this aspect of the bank.
Thank you, Farida.
Thank you, Farida. Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Evgeny Abdukarimov. I am Chief of Operations at OpenCBS. Our company is a new fintech company. We are developing different products for financial industry. Unfortunately, we don't work on a post-Soviet area. We work worldwide. Our clients right now in 15 countries, and we provide MIS for microfinance institutions, CBS for more powerful institutions or banks, loan originations, and of course different mobile solutions. We are mostly working in African countries, Caribbean, India, Sri Lanka. We have clients in Europe, in Luxembourg, and in Canada as well. Myanmar, Angola, and so on. So our area of interest is kind of outside of the area of post-Soviet countries. We are quite young, just 5 years old, and for fintech companies, especially working for such specific area, it's just very small period of time, but we could actually achieve quite significant things. A couple of years ago, as Ryan said, we decided as well to move to the cloud calculations and so on. So our flagship products, they use cloud computing and hosting in the internet. Mostly we are serving, as I said, microfinance companies, credit unions, and so on. We are a bit different from different world which Ryan described. Actually, most of needs which we face in those areas, markets, they are actually very basic. There is nothing about artificial intelligence or blockchain or something like that. For example, right now we have a project in Myanmar where we equip credit unions with our solutions. And for having 50,000-60,000 customers, everything paper-based. So actually, the main thing is just to equip them with some automation, right? And when we came there for the first time, they didn't have any computers, so it was quite complicated. So the products we develop, they're more kind of, the basis for the finance. It's not something going further like smart, intelligent system of scoring or so on. No, it's just a core banking solution, which allows you to manage transactions, to know your customer, and so on and so on. Of course, for our customers in markets like Zambia, now with Rwanda coming as well, they have some issues with internet connection and so on, so we developed some tablet applications that allows for the client officers to work offline in the fields, just to collect data, to disburse loans, and to collect repayments, being offline. And when they okay, and when they are coming back to the office, they just synchronize all the data. It looks actually quite funny. So the loan officer, he takes the bag full of money, he drives on the bike to the village, 100 kilometers. Then he sits just outside, and people coming, and he disburses the loan, just giving them money. And yeah, to avoid some frauds and so on, we had to develop some systems of checking clients, like by fingerprint and by so on, but then we found out that it's problematic as well, because all those villagers, they time to time have damaged skin on their fingers and so on. It's just complicated. So right now the new project is to include face recognition for the tablet application to identify clients more kind of precisely. And so we are working mostly in such kind of emergency areas or developing areas. Our clients from Europe, for example, or from Canada, they're more advanced, of course. We do for them automated integration with the payment platforms like SEPA or SWIFT or something like that. But anyway, the financial industry, they are quite conservative, and they don't want, it's kind of funny, but they don't want the full automation. They still want to control the things. So no. Payment should not go until I will click button and someone will confirm that I clicked button. And then payment will go. That's the truth. That's how the banks and all financial institutions works. They call it even 4 eyes principle. Means that I do something, but it not happen. Farida has to confirm that what I did is correct. And there can be additional person verifier that can confirm that again it did okay, Farida check it's okay, now I'm confirming both of them are okay, transaction go. So that's why actually obviously in our work as a fintech company and as implementer, provider of different solutions, we all the time facing very interesting, let's say, regulations, country by country, and that we have to follow and have to do something with that. But And that's actually one of our advantage is that we are building our products in a way that it's very, very flexible, it's extremely configurable, that each time when we are coming to some new market, new country, we just don't need to develop something from scratch. We just configure the things and voila, it works. So, I would say that maybe it's our fault that we don't have customers in Kyrgyzstan or in neighboring countries, and we are mostly focused outside. But for that, just to prevent some kind of weird questions on that, it's just economical reasons. It's just economical reasons why we work there. So we are working for this industry for last 10 years already. So we got quite good experience, and thanks to our approach and our business model, most of our staff, including developers, they go outside, they visit all those countries, all those customers, and each time when we do business analysis or final rollout, team of 2 or 3 guys are going there. For the last year, we've been to Angola, Barbados, Myanmar, Zambia, Luxembourg, about us, and I will be
I'll say a bit about it. It's we have a big name. This Blockchain Association of Central Asia, and I'm as a lawyer was involved in that community for solving some issues with regulation of. So about our what I can say about that association, we mostly work with the government, companies, with the international organization, which try to use blockchain technologies to solve some social problems or the other issues, other problems. For example, now we're working with the Eurasian economy commission, yeah? Under the Eurasian Economic Union. We're working with that commission on glossary of blockchain terms, where we are trying to give definition for that blockchain terms, and that terms will be give us recommendation to our countries, the countries who include that union. And other activities is helping to some local ICO companies, initial coin offering companies, by advising, for example, the legal system, for choosing the legal system where they can make ICO or something else. Also helping with some international organizations which want to solve some social problems by using blockchain, maybe one of the options. And we also working in that area, but we don't have so big background as my colleagues, speakers. So that's it. Maybe I can answer to the questions which are related with the regulation of blockchain or something like that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So why don't you keep that? I will use this one. So first, let me suggest a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this. So we're now going to shift into the discussion part. As I suggested, I would like to be the first person to ask a question. And what I'd like to go back to is Farida's comment, one thing that's been bothering me. I worked in, is the question of, is this a fad? Are we doing this because it's fashionable or trendy, or is there a real need? Part of my experience in technology is in artificial intelligence. I was working in artificial intelligence in the 1980s. That gives you some idea of how old AI work is. And we had a huge fad in artificial intelligence in the 1980s, and then it completely crashed. And a lot of companies went out of business, and it was quite something. So I would like to ask the panel, do you feel that this is a trend, fintech, and thank you, Farida, also for trying to define it. I'd like to hopefully come back to your definition. But do you think this is a fad, a trend? If not, what do you think are the real needs that fintech can address, particularly in Kyrgyzstan? Who would like to go first?
So artificial intelligence, it's very nice and supposed to be kind of our future. The main purpose and the main aim of artificial intelligence in the financial industry could be the initial or appraisal of the client. Kind of taking into account, checking what kind of history he has and so on, just to understand what is the probability that this client will not be able to pay his loan or something like that. But the thing is that I know that a few banks already they made a model of that, and right now trying to do something with that. The main issue which banks and financial institutions facing now is not enough data, actually. Because to teach AI how to properly properly estimate the probabilities, you need much more data actually and much more time. And taking into account how fast the financial industry evolves, I don't expect we will get something in 10-15 years. Because look, the SWIFT system exists for 45 years. It still takes 3 days to get a transfer from, I don't know, from Hong Kong to Bishkek. And nobody wants to change something because it's stable, it's confirmed, and it's hardly to convince guys from the bank, oh, come on, you need to use it, it's fun, it's good. No. And all the transactions are money. And they would like to be just sure that the technology exists for 10-15 years already, it's proved. And it's that they're going to use. So that's why I don't think in 10-15 years we will have something. As for Kyrgyz fintech companies, for ourselves as well, look, to build something like that, you need to get much more resources. Kyrgyzstan is not kind of fintech companies in Kyrgyzstan just for not big. How much resources they invest into that, and still, it's not something that happened yesterday. Sorry, but AI they're trying to do something for the last 40 years already, and nothing properly works still. The best thing we've seen is Elon Musk's chatbot that plays Dota game and losing in front of the real players. That's it. So that's why I'm coming back to my initial statement. Expecting something in 10-15 years, it's just unreasonable.
Farida?
Okay, so the question is there a need for fintech, or is this a trend? Yeah.
Is this just being trendy, or is there a real need here that fintech can address?
Yes, so since again, definition of fintech we're discussing today is quite broad, there is definitely a lot of fintech already in place, like tablets, technology, automation of processes, and even payments, mobile banking is already in the country. Is there a need for it? Yes, definitely. So one of the gauges that microfinance rating and inclusive finance players use is there is a fintech survey where they will go in the country and they will make a random sampling and they will ask people, do you have a loan? If you needed money, did you lend it from a formal lender? Or did you go to a payday lender? Or did you go to your relatives and neighbors? So based on these statistics, Kyrgyzstan has still a long way to go. I will probably be wrong now with the figures. I will encourage you to look on fintechs, but maybe around 20% only claim that they actually use banking system for payments. So the banks still have a lot of area of penetration in this. Of course, if you are someplace remote with limited access to banking branches, having sort of a digital delivery, because fintech, it's a broad question, but when we are talking about digital products, it's not a new product, it's more like a delivery channel. And so there is a need for this delivery channel to the remote areas. And I do think institutions can do it. When I said that it is trendy, I meant that the study behind how they do it is more like, I want to be trend. It's not like I will identify a segment client, I will identify the issue that this client do, I will try to solve the issue, I will teach the client to use it. All these other steps need strengthening, basically.
So I don't know that I can answer the in Kyrgyzstan part of the question, but I think that really for me the most relevant part is their need. I want to agree with what Evgeny said before about data sufficiency that's required for AI, as well as some of the points that Farida made. And just highlight today, Seth and I had lunch, one of the discussions that we had. Here in Kyrgyzstan, how often do you make payments without cash? Are there enough services and vendors that can actually support cashless transactions? And I think having that infrastructure in place is really what gets you to a place where you have data. And so I would argue that the first order problem there, I think, is really digitizing the entire payment system itself before you really have the capabilities to deliver value through AI.
That's an interesting way of thinking about that question. How many people here feel like we are moving rapidly into a cashless era, or are all of you personally still doing lots of transactions in cash? Cash people? Electronic people? Wow. So we're there, we're ready. So now we just got to harvest the data and then we can start doing stuff. I'm surprised actually those answers, because I still carry a lot of cash with me. And I go through it pretty fast, but this is good. All right. Audience, questions?
Okay, I have two questions. One question is for Farida. I think you correctly mentioned about these trends, and like every majority of the banks in Kyrgyzstan, they are trying to catch up with these digital trends. But I think, in my opinion, the problem is they are trying to do this so-called digital lipstick. So they have fancy web interface, fancy application on the customer side, but they have ugly and not flexible IT infrastructure. So in our bank, we're also trying to set this digital transformation goal, and it's kind of overwhelming. We understand that we need to do things with user interface, customer journey, but at the same time some kind of internal digitalization and working on the culture of the people. Can you advise or share your opinion on how to prioritize? Like, should we start from the internal automation of our processes, and it will help us to